The old Vothar stood before the council with 3 of his 4 arms trembling. Krelvan had not expected to live this long. 50 years had passed since the war ended, and every morning he woke surprised that his heart still beat. The council chamber stretched vast and silent around him, filled with representatives from 30 different species. They all wanted to hear his story. They all wanted to know about the humans. The head counselor, a floating jellyfish creature from the Andalis system, spoke in the universal language. Witness Krelvan, you served in the Vothar 7th Invasion Fleet. You were present during the Earth campaign. Tell us what happened. Krelvan's throat sacs expanded and contracted. Where could he even begin? How could he explain what they had found on that small blue world? We thought it would be easy, he said finally. His voice came out rough and broken. We had conquered 47 star systems. Some species surrendered when our ships entered their orbit. Others fought for a few weeks before accepting defeat. We were the Vothar Empire. We had never lost. The council members shifted in their seats. They knew this part of the story. Everyone in the galaxy knew about Vothar pride. It was their pride that led them to Earth. Admiral Thexnor commanded our fleet, Krelvan continued. He was a decorated warrior. He had won battles on 12 different worlds. When our scouts found Earth, they reported a primitive civilization. The humans had barely reached their own moon. They had no energy shields. Their ships could not travel faster than light. The Admiral laughed when he read the report. Krelvan remembered that laugh. It echoed in his nightmares. We sent 3 battlecruisers first. Just 3, to test their defenses. We thought it was generous. We expected them to surrender immediately when they saw our power. He paused, his breath rattling. The humans did not surrender. They fired their primitive missiles at our ships. The missiles could not penetrate our shields, but they kept firing. For hours they kept firing. The Andalis counselor leaned forward. And then we landed troops. The Admiral chose a peninsula in a region the humans called Korea. The land was mountainous and defensible. We thought it would make a good base. There were cities nearby, and we could use them as leverage. Krelvan's voice dropped lower. We met Commander Tae Yang there. Even after 50 years, that name made his skin prickle. Tae Yang had been a human male in his middle years, with dark hair going gray and eyes that seemed to calculate everything. He commanded the regional defense forces, barely 3,000 soldiers against their invasion army of 50,000. The humans had built fortifications in the mountains, concrete bunkers, underground tunnels, artillery positions. Our scanners showed us everything. We knew exactly where they were. Krelvan's mandibles clicked together nervously. Admiral Thexnor ordered a direct assault. He said we would crush them in 6 hours and make an example. The humans would see their defenders fall and lose hope. The battle had started at dawn. Vothar drop ships descended through the morning sky. Shields glowing as human weapons fire bounced harmlessly away. Krelvan had been a junior officer then, commanding a squad of 20 soldiers. He remembered feeling excited. This would be his first real combat, and it would be over quickly. We landed in a valley between 2 mountains. The humans immediately began shelling our position. Their explosives were crude, but effective enough to shake the ground. We advanced in formation, just as our training taught us. We would push forward, overwhelm their bunkers, and plant the Vothar flag by sunset. He paused, and the council waited. They sensed what was coming. But the humans did not fight the way we expected. They did not hold their positions and trade fire with us. Instead, they retreated. They fell back into the mountains and disappeared. We thought we had won. We thought they were running away. Krelvan's voice turned bitter. We were fools. The humans had drawn the Vothar forces deep into the mountain passes. The tunnels connected in ways their scanners had not revealed. The humans appeared behind them, firing and vanishing before the Vothar could respond. They used explosives to collapse tunnel entrances, trapping Vothar squads in the darkness. They diverted underground rivers to flood positions. They set fires that created smoke thick enough to blind Vothar thermal sensors. Commander Taeyang did not fight to hold ground. He fought to kill us. Every position we took was a trap. Every advance cost us blood. Krelvan's hands clenched. The 6-hour battle lasted 96 hours. We lost 4,000 soldiers. The humans lost 800. The council chamber filled with shocked murmurs. A 10-to-1 casualty ratio against a technologically superior force was unheard of. We called for reinforcements, Krelvan said quietly. We told Admiral Thexnor that the humans were more dangerous than our scouts had reported. He ordered the entire invasion fleet to Earth. He said we would make the humans pay for their resistance. Krelvan looked up at the assembled council members. That is when it began. That is when we learned what hell truly meant. We thought we were conquering Earth, but we were just walking into a trap that would destroy our empire. The old Vothar's voice faded. The council chamber remained silent, waiting for him to continue. But Krelvan needed a moment. Even after 50 years, the memories were sharp enough to cut. He had survived the war, but part of him had died on Earth. The part that believed the Vothar were invincible. The part that thought war could be civilized. He would tell them everything. They deserved to know the truth about the humans. The council gave Krelvan water, though his species did not need it often. He drank anyway, letting the cool liquid soothe his throat. Then he continued his testimony. The full invasion began 3 weeks after our first landing. 200 ships entered Earth's orbit. We had 500,000 soldiers ready to deploy across the planet. Admiral Thexnor addressed us before the assault. He said the humans had won a minor battle through luck and tricks, but now they would face the true might of the Vothar Empire. Krelvan's mandibles twitched in what might have been a bitter smile. We still did not understand. We still thought this would be a normal conquest. The Vothar forces landed in multiple locations across Earth. Krelvan's regiment deployed to the same Korean peninsula where they had fought Commander Taeyang. This time they came with heavier weapons, more soldiers, and orbital support. They established a forward base in a captured human city, fortifying it with shield generators and plasma cannons. We thought we were safe in our base. We had sensors that could detect movement for kilometers. We had automated defense turrets. No human could approach without us knowing. Krelvan's voice dropped. But the humans did not need to approach. On the third night, explosions ripped through the base's power grid. The shields fell. The lights died. In the darkness, Vothar soldiers scrambled to activate emergency systems. That was when the human attack began. They came from underground. They had dug tunnels beneath our base while we watched the surface. A human named Jin Ho led the infiltration team. He had surrendered to our patrols 2 days earlier. We thought he was a deserter. We put him with other prisoners in a holding area near the power cores. Jin Ho had not been a deserter. He was an engineer who had volunteered to be captured. While the Vothar guards ignored him, he studied their power systems. He used simple tools stolen from the prison work detail to build a device that overloaded the cores. When the base defenses failed, human forces that had been hiding in the tunnels attacked. We lost 2,000 soldiers that night. The humans disappeared before dawn, taking our weapons and supplies with them. Jin Ho died in the explosion he caused, but he crippled our strongest base. Krelvan's voice held something like respect. That was when I first understood. The humans did not value individual glory. They valued winning. They would sacrifice anything to win. The war changed after that night. The Vothar no longer tried to hold territory. The humans would not let them. Instead, human forces led by officers like Lieutenant Dong Min specialized in constant raids. They hit supply convoys. They destroyed communication towers. They poisoned water sources. They never stayed to fight a pitched battle. They killed and vanished like ghosts. Dong Min was young, barely into adulthood by human standards, but he commanded a unit that destroyed 17 of our supply columns in 1 month. We sent hunter teams to track him down. They never returned. We set ambushes along the routes he used. He changed routes. We tried to predict his patterns. Krelvan shook his head. He had no patterns. Every attack was different. The Vothar casualties climbed, not from glorious battles, but from attrition. Soldiers died in ones and twos, picked off by human snipers. Transport ships crashed after humans sabotaged their fuel. Officers disappeared from their quarters in the night. The humans fought without honor, without fairness, without mercy. Commander Young-Soo controlled the civilian population in the mountains. We thought civilians would be easy to manage. We thought they would want peace. Krelvan's laugh was harsh. Young-Soo evacuated them through tunnel systems we did not know existed. But before they left, the civilians helped him set traps throughout their own cities. Buildings rigged to collapse, roads laced with mines, water systems filled with poison. When our troops occupied the empty cities, they walked into nightmares. Krelvan had seen soldiers go mad from the constant stress. Every door might hide a bomb. Every road might be trapped. Every quiet moment might be the seconds before an attack. The humans had turned their own territory into a weapon against the invaders. After 3 months, we had suffered 30,000 casualties. The humans had lost perhaps 5,000 soldiers. Admiral Thexnor was furious. He ordered us to take prisoners, to interrogate them, to learn their strategies. That was how Krelvan met Haiwan. She was a human female captured during a raid on a medical station. The Vothar had expected a combat medic to be weak, focused on healing rather than fighting. But Haiwan had killed 3 soldiers before they stunned her. They brought her to Krelvan's unit for questioning. I was ordered to interrogate her, to make her tell us where the human bases were hidden, to break her spirit. Krelvan's voice softened. But when I met her, she was treating wounded Vothar soldiers. The scene had confused every Vothar present. Haiwan sat in a cell with 4 injured soldiers who had been waiting for medical transport. She had demanded bandages and medicine from the guards. When they refused, she tore strips from her own clothes to bind wounds. She spoke calmly to the injured soldiers, even though they were her enemies. I asked her why she helped us. She said because they were wounded and she was a medic. She said that healing was not something she turned off, even for enemies. Krelvan remembered her exact words. Then she looked at me and said that we would lose this war because we did not understand humans at all. Krelvan had reported this to his superiors. They laughed and said the human was trying to manipulate him, but her words stayed in his mind. That night, his unit was ambushed in the same tunnel where they had captured Haiwan. Somehow the humans knew exactly where they would be. Krelvan survived only because he had been at the rear of the column. He was beginning to understand that the humans were not just fierce warriors. They were something more terrifying. They were completely willing to do whatever it took to survive. 6 months into the invasion, Admiral Thexnor made his greatest mistake. He called for the elite Third Strike Legion to come to Earth. These were the Vothar Empire's finest soldiers, veterans of a dozen campaigns. They had never failed to break enemy resistance. 10,000 of them arrived with the newest weapons and the heaviest armor. The Admiral was certain the Strike Legion would end the war, Krelvan told the Council. He gave them one objective: break the human command structure, kill their leaders, make them lose hope. The Strike Legion deployed across the planet, targeting known human command centers. But the humans had been preparing for this. They had a general named Hyunwoo who coordinated all of Earth's defense forces. Somehow he knew the Vothar plans before they even began the attacks. Every time the Strike Legion hit a command center, they found it empty. The humans had evacuated hours before, but they left behind gifts for us: bombs, poison gas, biological weapons we did not even know humans possessed. Krelvan's voice shook. The Strike Legion lost 1,000 soldiers in the first week without seeing a single enemy. Then the humans changed tactics. Instead of running, they made a stand. Captain Bora commanded a mountain fortress that controlled a vital pass. The Strike Legion needed that pass to reach human supply lines. They sent 10,000 soldiers to take it. Bo-Ra had only 200. The battle lasted 6 days. Bo-Ra's soldiers fought from bunkers carved into the mountain itself. Our artillery could not reach them. Our aircraft could not bomb them without destroying the pass we needed. So the Strike Legion had to fight their way up the mountain, position by position. Krelvan had not been there, but he heard the reports. Every meter cost the Vothar dozens of lives. The humans had prepared the battlefield perfectly. They knew exactly where the Vothar would advance. They had ranged every weapon. They had planned every retreat. Bo-Ra herself killed 83 Vothar soldiers before she fell. On the 6th day, the Strike Legion reached the fortress summit. They found it abandoned except for Bo-Ra's body. She had sent her remaining soldiers away during the night. She stayed alone to man the defenses and give them time to escape. Krelvan paused. The Strike Legion planted their flag and declared victory. That same day, the humans launched a counter-offensive across the entire planet. The humans had been preparing for months while the Vothar focused on the mountain fortress. General Yunwu had used the time to coordinate every resistance group on Earth. They attacked simultaneously in 200 locations. Supply bases burned. Communication arrays fell silent. Troop transports exploded. In 6 hours, the Vothar lost more soldiers than in the previous 6 months. We realized then that we had been fooled. Bo-Ra's fortress was never the real target. It was a distraction. They sacrificed 200 soldiers and gave us a meaningless victory while they prepared to strike everywhere at once. The Vothar reeled from the coordinated assault. But worse was coming. A human engineer named Jae-Sung appeared on all communication channels with a message. He showed the Vothar soldiers technical diagrams of their own weapons. Then he showed them how humans had adapted the designs. The humans had been capturing Vothar equipment and learning from it. Now they had built their own versions. We thought our technology would always be superior. Jae-Sung proved us wrong. He showed us human fighters equipped with Vothar shields, human rifles powered by Vothar energy cells, human armor that could withstand our plasma fire. Krelvan's mandibles clicked nervously. He thanked us for teaching them. Days later, a human pilot named Sang-Hee led an attack on the Vothar fleet in orbit. Her squadron flew ships that humans had built in secret factories underground. The ships were crude compared to Vothar designs, but they worked, and there were hundreds of them. They came up from Earth like a swarm of insects. Our point defense systems shot down dozens, but there were too many. They crashed into our cruisers. They fired missiles at our carriers. Sang-Hee herself destroyed a battle cruiser by flying her damaged fighter directly into its bridge. Krelvan's voice held unwilling admiration. She broadcast a message before impact. She said humanity would never surrender. The battle in orbit raged for days. The Vothar fleet had better ships and more firepower, but the humans had desperation. They fought with a fury that shocked the Vothar commanders. Ship after ship fell from the sky. Human and Vothar debris rained down on the planet below. Admiral Thexnor watched his fleet being torn apart. He made a decision that would haunt Krelvan forever. The Admiral authorized orbital bombardment, not on military targets, on cities. He said if the humans would not surrender, we would destroy their civilization until they had nothing left to defend. The bombardment began at dawn. Plasma beams lanced down from orbit, turning cities into molten glass. Kinetic weapons struck with the force of nuclear explosions. In 6 hours, the Vothar killed 17 million humans. The Admiral believed this would finally break their spirit. We were wrong again. Commander Tai Yang had predicted this. He had evacuated the major cities weeks before. Most of the people who died were already dead, killed in earlier fighting. Tai Yang had left the bodies there to make the cities look occupied. The revelation stunned the Vothar command. The humans had sacrificed their own cities as a deception. They had let the Vothar think they were winning while the real population hid in shelters deep underground. But 17 million still died. Real people caught in the evacuation. Children, the old, the sick. Krelvan's voice broke. I saw the recordings of the bombardment. I heard the screams on the communication channels. And I knew then that we had become monsters. We had come to conquer, but we had become exterminators. The orbital bombardment did not end the war. It transformed it. The humans stopped taking prisoners. They stopped showing any mercy at all. They fought with a hatred that made their previous resistance look gentle. The Vothar had tried to destroy their world, and now the humans would destroy the Vothar. That was the turning point, not because we finally hurt them badly, but because we made them stop seeing us as enemies and start seeing us as vermin to be eliminated. Krelvan looked at the council with haunted eyes. We taught them to hate us, and humans are very, very good at hate. The war entered its final year, and everything changed. The humans had learned to build ships that could travel faster than light. It took the Vothar centuries to develop that technology. The humans did it in months, studying captured Vothar vessels and reverse engineering the drives with desperate speed. We thought space was our sanctuary, Krelvan told the council. We controlled the orbits. We had ships the humans could not match. But then they came to us. The first human attack on a Vothar ship caught everyone off guard. A specialist named Wu Jin led a team that used small boarding craft to attach to a cruiser's hull. They cut through the armor with adapted plasma torches and entered the ship while it traveled between star systems. By the time the crew realized what was happening, the humans controlled engineering. Wu Jin's team killed 300 Vothar soldiers inside that ship. They used the corridors as weapons, fighting in close quarters where our superior technology meant nothing. When they captured the bridge, they turned the ship around and flew it back to Earth as a prize. Krelvan's voice held a mixture of horror and respect. That one human boarding action gave Earth a functional Vothar cruiser. They studied it and built more ships. The war moved into space as human fleets grew larger. They fought with captured Vothar vessels and their own crude designs. They lost 10 ships for every one they destroyed, but they kept building more. Earth had turned its entire civilization into a war machine. Back in the Vothar High Command, arguments broke out about the war's future. Some generals said they should withdraw while they still could. Others said retreat would shame the Empire forever. Admiral Thexanor led the faction demanding total victory. He said they would exterminate the humans completely rather than admit defeat. The Empire split, not officially, but in reality. Half the commanders wanted peace, half wanted genocide. We started fighting each other as much as we fought the humans. Krelvan found himself on the wrong side of this divide. He had seen too much death, too much destruction. When Admiral Thexanor ordered the use of biological weapons against Earth's food supplies, Krelvan spoke against it in a command meeting. That made him a traitor in Thexanor's eyes. They sent me to a punishment battalion. Soldiers who had questioned orders, shown cowardice, or failed in their duties. We were given the most dangerous missions. They expected us to die and solve the Empire's problem of dissent. The punishment battalion was ordered to assault a human research facility. Intelligence said the humans were developing a new weapon there. The battalion attacked and met fierce resistance. Human defenders fought with the desperation of people protecting something vital. Krelvan's unit broke through the outer defenses but walked into an ambush. That is when I saw Haywan again, the medic I had interrogated months before. She was there with other medical staff evacuating the wounded. Krelvan's voice softened at the memory. The fighting was chaos. A wall collapsed near me. I was trapped under debris, both my left arms crushed. My soldiers had retreated. I was left behind to die. Haywan found him in the rubble. She could have left him. She could have killed him. Instead, she dragged him to cover and began treating his wounds. She worked while explosions shook the building around them. She gave him medicine for the pain and bound his arms to stop the bleeding. I asked her why she saved me. She said the same thing as before. She was a medic. Healing was what she did. Krelvan's mandibles clicked softly. Then she said that she hoped I would remember this, that when the war ended, I would tell others what happened. She said someone needed to survive to speak the truth. Haywan got Krelvan to a Vothar rescue team before disappearing back into the battle. He never saw her again during the war, but her words changed him. He started documenting everything he witnessed. He recorded atrocities on both sides. He wrote down the names of the dead when he could. While Krelvan recovered from his injuries, the war reached its crescendo. Admiral Thexnor launched biological weapons at Earth, despite objections from moderate commanders. The weapons were designed to destroy human crops and starve the population. Within weeks, famine began spreading across the planet. We thought we had finally found a way to win. But then a human scientist named Min-Ah broadcast a message. She had developed a cure for the biological agent. In 3 weeks. A problem that should have taken years to solve, she solved in weeks. Krelvan shook his head in disbelief. The humans distributed the cure across the planet. The famine ended before it could break them. Mina's accomplishment terrified the Vothar leadership. If humans could overcome biological warfare that quickly, what could stop them? The answer was nothing. Earth's fleets grew stronger every day. Their tactics improved. Their technology advanced at an impossible rate. Captain Shung Ho led the human fleet in a massive assault on the Vothar home system. This was humanity's final gamble. If they won, the war ended. If they lost, Earth would be defenseless. Shung Ho gathered every ship humans had built or captured. 500 vessels jumped into Vothar space and attacked the defense fleet. The battle lasted 9 days. It was slaughter on both sides. We destroyed half their fleet. They destroyed half of ours. Krelvan's voice dropped to a whisper. When it ended, 20,000 Vothar were dead. 30,000 humans were dead. Both fleets were crippled. But the humans had won because they held the orbital space above our home world. Shung Ho sent a message to the Vothar government. Surrender or watch your cities burn like you burned ours. The government had no choice. The fleet was destroyed. The Empire's military power was broken. They agreed to negotiate terms. But Admiral Thexnor refused to accept defeat. He took control of the remaining Loyalist ships and retreated to a fortress station. From there, he planned one final strike. He would load ships with antimatter and crash them into Earth. If the Vothar could not have victory, they would have revenge. I was still in the punishment battalion. Thexnor conscripted all of us for his final mission. We would be the ones to fly the suicide ships to Earth. Krelvan's hands trembled at the memory. I knew then that I had to stop him, not for humanity, but for what remained of Vothar honor. We could not end this war by becoming genocidal monsters. The final confrontation was coming. Krelvan's voice grew steadier as he reached the end of his testimony. The council chamber remained silent, every representative focused on his words. He had one final story to tell, the one that had defined the rest of his life. Admiral Thexnor gathered his loyalists on the fortress station. 2,000 soldiers who believed, as he did, that the Vothar Empire could never accept defeat from primitives. They loaded 3 ships with antimatter warheads. Each ship could destroy a continent. Thexnor planned to launch all 3 at Earth and end the human species forever. Krelvan had been assigned to the flagship as part of the security detail. His injured arms had healed enough for basic duty. The Admiral wanted every available soldier for the final mission. As they prepared to launch, Thexnor addressed his forces. He spoke of honor and glory. He said they would be remembered as heroes who refused to surrender. I listened to his speech and felt nothing but disgust. There was no honor in genocide, no glory in murdering billions. I knew someone had to stop this madness, even if it cost me my life. The ships prepared to launch when human forces arrived. Captain Sung Ho had tracked Thexanor to the fortress station. His damaged fleet jumped in and immediately attacked. The battle was brief and brutal. Human ships rammed into the fortress defenses, trading their lives to stop the suicide mission. Sung Ho's flagship crashed into our docking bay. His soldiers boarded us while his ship was still burning. They fought their way through the corridors, dying by the dozens, but never stopping. Krelvan's voice held admiration. Then Commander Tae Yang himself came through the breach. He was old by then, his hair completely gray, but he still fought like a young soldier. Tae Yang led a small team toward the bridge. Krelvan watched as they cut through the Admiral's guards with brutal efficiency. The humans fought without hesitation, without mercy, but also without unnecessary cruelty. They killed those who fought back and spared those who surrendered. When Tae Yang reached the bridge, Admiral Thexanor activated the ship's self-destruct. He would detonate the antimatter warheads manually, destroying the station and everything nearby. It would kill thousands of Vothar and humans, but he no longer cared. He shouted that if the Empire would not let him win, he would die taking enemies with him. I shot him, my own admiral, my own commander. Krelvan's voice was steady despite the weight of that memory. I used my sidearm and put 3 plasma bolts into his back. He fell forward onto the control panel, dead before he could trigger the warheads. The bridge fell silent. Vothar and human soldiers stared at Krelvan. He stood there with his weapon still raised, waiting to see if he would be killed for what he had done. Commander Tae Yang approached him slowly, hands visible and empty. Tae Yang asked me why I did it. I told him because enough people had died, because the war was over whether Thexanor accepted it or not, because someone needed to choose peace. Krelvan remembered every word. Tae Yang nodded. Then he took my weapon and placed me under arrest, not as an enemy but as a witness who needed to survive. The war ended that day. The Vothar government formally surrendered. The peace terms were harsh but not vindictive. Humans demanded reparations, territory, and military restrictions. But they did not demand the destruction of the Vothar species. They did not seek revenge beyond justice. We lost 60% of our military. We lost our empire. We lost our pride, Krelvan told the council. But we survived because the humans chose to let us survive. They could have exterminated us. After what we did to them, they would have been justified, but they did not. The tribunal session had reached its conclusion. The Andalese counselor asked the final question. Witness Krelvan. This council must determine if humanity violated the galactic conventions of warfare. We have heard testimony from many sources. Some species call humans dangerous. Some call them savage. What is your judgment? Krelvan took a long breath. Humans fought without following our rules of engagement. They used tactics we considered dishonorable. They were willing to sacrifice anything to survive. But they did not start the war. We invaded their world. We tried to conquer them. Everything they did was in response to an existential threat. He looked around at the assembled species. You ask if they are dangerous? Yes. Humans are the most dangerous species I have ever encountered. Not because they are strong or smart or advanced, but because they will never ever give up. You cannot intimidate them. You cannot break them. You can only kill them all or make peace. The council murmured among themselves. Then the chamber doors opened and 2 humans entered. Krelvan recognized them immediately. General Hyun-woo, now very old and walking with assistants, and beside him, her hair white but her eyes still sharp, was Hae-won. They came to testify about humanity's conduct during the war. Hyun-woo presented evidence of Vothar atrocities that justified human retaliation, but he also presented evidence of humanity's restraint. Records showing that humans had developed weapons they never used, biological agents that could have wiped out the Vothar species. Antimatter bombs that could have destroyed the Vothar home world, all built, all ready, all left unused. We could have exterminated them, Hyun-woo said quietly. We chose not to. War makes monsters of everyone involved, but we tried to remain human even in hell. Haewon testified about treating Vothar prisoners, about the medical care given even to enemies, about the decision to spare Vothar civilians when human forces could have slaughtered them in revenge. She spoke of the letters human soldiers sent home, expressing horror at what war had turned them into. We never wanted to be conquerors, Haewon said. We only wanted to survive. And when we won, we wanted peace, not genocide. The council deliberated for 3 days. When they reconvened, the Andalis counselor announced the verdict. Humanity was cleared of war crimes. Both sides had committed atrocities in the heat of conflict, but humanity's actions were deemed defensive rather than aggressive. Earth would be welcomed into the galactic community with full membership status. After the tribunal ended, Krelvan met with Taeyang privately. The 2 old soldiers sat in a quiet garden, surrounded by plants from both their worlds. They did not speak for a long time. Finally, Taeyang broke the silence. Do you regret it? Stopping your admiral? Krelvan shook his head. I regret the war. I regret every death. But stopping Thexnor? No. That was the first right thing I did in years. Taeyang nodded slowly. I wanted to hate you, all of you. When your ships came to Earth, when your soldiers killed my people, I wanted nothing more than revenge. He paused, his voice heavy with old pain. But Haewon told me about you, how you questioned orders, how you tried to stop the madness. She said if we became like the worst of you, then you would have truly won. So what do we do now? Krelvan asked. We build, we remember, we make sure it never happens again. Taeyang stood slowly, his aged body protesting the movement. We learned something from the war. We learned we can become monsters if we are not careful, so we choose every day not to be monsters. Krelvan watched the old human walk away. He thought about Haewon's words in that ruined building, about someone needing to survive to tell the truth. He had survived. He had told the truth. Now he would spend whatever life remained to him ensuring that both species learned from their shared nightmare. The war had been hell, but from hell, perhaps something better could grow.